music for you, but welcome to the Grants Unlocked webinar for Florida. So just give folks around 5 minutes to come in, especially since we're starting a little bit early.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lola. Just a quick question. Will my screen continue to be shared, or will I have to re-engage and share my screen?
So right now your screen is the way it looks on live stream is that whoever's talking is sort of in the top right hand corner as like a little thing, and then your screen share is over the whole screen. So that's generally how it looks. Whoever's talking is like spotlighted in the top right hand corner. So you shouldn't have to reshare your screen at all. I think that.
And you're able to see the, the slides?
Yes, I can see the
Cool.
slides. I'm having a look at the restream available that because we are going to restream this as well on YouTube and uh, on some other places where we have access. I think all the attendees will be let in at 5 precisely or 10 your time precisely. So we are a little bit early. I could have waited, but that's fine. No worries. Okay, just if anyone's just joining us now, we are going to be waiting at least 5 minutes past our start time just to give folks the chance to come in. But please feel free to make use of the Q&A feature that we have throughout the webinar. And you can also add questions in the chat. We'll be able to see those as well, but the QA function makes it a little bit easier for us to manage questions without losing anything. So feel free to add any questions if you have any right now or throughout the webinar, and we will have time later on in the webinar to be able to get to those. So yeah, just give a few more minutes for people to come in. Sorry, we don't have any wait music. If you would like, if you're just attending, feel free to put in the chat if you'd like, because everyone should be from Florida here, because it is a Florida focused webinar, but feel free to add if you're in a specific area, city, school district, feel free to add that in the chat if you want to as well. Cool. All right. Just gonna give a little bit more time. Is it going to cool down hopefully a little bit more, Michael, in Florida?
Well, it sort of shifts from rain to sun. So the only reprieve we have really is after it rains. The ground cools slightly, and we have the humidity as an effect. But basically, we have two options in the summer here in Florida: uh, rain or hot, and sometimes hot rain.
Oh no. Yikes. I've had some experience with the humidity that can happen a little bit south of the border. Well, not south of the border, but like around the south aspects of the US. And it's a lot.
Yeah, you guys are, I think your longitude and latitude is equivalent to, I think, somewhere in Canada. So it's much
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
It's
And
much,
the humidity is like I've been in humid, like it's definitely nothing to joke around with.
yeah.
um Cool. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure that some people will trickle in later on. And of course, there are going to be people who are going to watch the recording of this later on. So, yeah, I'm Lola. I'm coming at you from Strawbees. And we are doing a webinar series on different grants in different states. And this time we're focusing on Florida. So, if you want to go to the next slide for me, Michael. Oh, you skip one. Yeah. So today's agenda, mostly it'll be a lot of Michael talking, but feel free, as I said, if you missed it, please feel free to add any questions you have in the Q&A. I'm doing a bit of a welcome and introduction now, but we're going to have a little bit of Meet the Expert. Michael introduce himself. We'll talk about where you can find STEM grants in Florida and how to write a successful application and using grants to fund STEM tools like Strawbees. And then we'll have a little bit of Q&A. And I think feel free to go into a little bit of detail, Michael, since we'll leave about like 5 or so minutes for the Q&A at the end. But we will, if we need to go over time, if there are more questions, we are more than happy to do so. So next slide. So yeah, let's say hi to Michael Knowlton and I will leave it over to you.
Thank you, Lola. So good morning, everybody joining us from Florida. My name is Michael Knowlton. I am the STEM coordinator, as we say, STEAM in Santa Rosa. That's in the Panhandle of Florida. It's a beautiful place to live right on the Emerald Coast. My current position is in the Career and Technical Education Department. I have formerly been an instructional technology specialist working closely in the district's Office of Professional Learning. And before that, I was a middle school teacher. I taught ESE, Behavioral Focus Unit. I taught mathematics and also language arts before my move up to the district office. But one thing has been consistent all my time in education. My focus has been to bring purpose and relevancy through real world instruction to our students in every classroom, every day, and that has never changed. So I'm very proud to work in Santa Rosa County. Our district has recently been notified that we have received a global STEM accreditation through Cognia. We are one of 3 districts in the state of Florida to have that recognition. And so we are very innovative in our practice and implementation. And I think that's helped us become leaders in the state and also the nation. So shout out to Santa Rosa County District Schools. So we're going to begin this webinar. We're going to ease into it, where to find some STEM grants. Throughout the next 30 minutes or so, I want to talk about some traditional routes for finding grants, but also talk about the importance of building relationships and a network to seek some maybe non-traditional funding sources. So let's take a look at our slides. Some sources we'll talk about today are local education foundations in Santa Rosa. It's the Santa Rosa Education Foundation. Some state level STEM or innovation funds, namely Title I, Title IV, and Title V. We'll talk about some corporate and nonprofit foundations that Santa Rosa has worked with in the past to secure STEM tools such as Strawbees, namely the Society for American Military Engineers and our wonderful partners in Florida Power and Light. Lastly, we'll talk about some national programs where you might find some traction in securing funding for STEM tools, namely the National Science Foundation, especially if you're partnering with a neighboring university in some aspect of programming. And for us, we are very much military connected community. So the Department of Defense has been a wonderful partner in securing grants, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the webinar. So a few tips on identifying grant opportunities early. I got 4 tips for us, and I guess we're going to ease into it. We'll sort of snorkel at first, and then maybe we'll do a deep dive in a couple slides. So tips on identifying grants early. Here's how I do it. I subscribe to some key notifications, and namely, those are grants.gov and sam.gov. I use know your grant cycles, y'all. It's not a surprise. A lot of these grants are predictable. They're regular. They come at a certain time of year, so it's important that you do know when those grants are coming or going. And lastly, use some forecasting tools. Grants.gov does a great job of basically listing all current and upcoming grants. So check out those later. I'm not going to go deep into it because there are your resources right there. But just know that identifying grants early is one of the most effective ways to increase your chances of funding success. Next slide. Okay, so how to write a successful grant application. Writing a successful grant application, especially in Florida, means combining clear storytelling, strong alignment with funder goals, and data-driven justification. Back to this slide. So for one, understand the funder's priorities. Okay. As a little pro tip, I create a checklist of requirements. Funders in Florida, especially like the Department of Education, will always reject incomplete or non-compliant applications. The second thing you want to do is conduct a local needs assessment. Your proposal should be grounded in real data that explains why your school district needs the funding. So make it specific to you. The other thing that's really important is to define SMART goals. Those are goals that are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, and they're time bound. All right, so down to the fun stuff. Some tips from me on what has worked in my experience. And again, the traditional route, that's great. We've got some tips on that. But I also want to talk about some networking and relationship building. So specifically, you want to build relationships. And I'm going to run down a few examples of how I was able to build relationships internally or with the community. So for one, we have a STEAM council that meets 3 times a year, and we invite business and industry to attend that STEAM council. We receive their input, what's important to them, what do they want their employees to know when they're hiring. And so we were basically reverse engineer. We start with the career and we work backwards to inform our educational programming and policies to match workforce demands once our students graduate. So with that council, I've been able to secure funding through Florida Power and Light and the Society for American Military Engineers, who have many chapters throughout the state of Florida. And they write basically mini grants that are annual. And for the past 3 years, we've received funding from that organization to buy Strawbees to put in our mobile STEM lab, the think tank. Internally, also, don't forget your math and science department. A lot of times, like for me, the STEAM guy gets sort of mixed in the middle of all of math and science and language arts and social studies. But I sort of like to attach myself to those departments or become an extension of those departments. So in the past, I've worked with math and science to write about $200 worth of targeted math and experiential science grants. And with that, in addition to Strawbees, we've also secured funding for other STEM tools and equipment. DODEA, that's the Department of Defense. They are, like I said, they are a great partner for Santa Rosa specifically because of our military connectedness. But we have written grants in collaboration with the Social Studies Department, and we've written grants to reach English language learners. And I also incorporate Strawbees in some activities for parent and family involvement. And that is all DODEA funded, Department of Defense, DODEA grants. Check those out. Another avenue of funding that I've been able to extend myself to or reach into is the career and technical education. We were part of a large Triumph grant. That's money from the BP oil spill. And if you're from Florida, you remember that over a decade ago. But we were able to write a Triumph grant, and we are creating a Santa Rosa Center for Innovation, which is a STEAM and career and technical education focused innovation center. We secured about $10 million through Triumph for that, and about $500,000 of that is for STEM tools and equipment. So with that, I think we purchased 12 classrooms worth of Strawbees STEM kits to be placed in the Innovation Center. And another interesting, and I think possibly the most unique avenue for funding that works in Santa Rosa is we have an after-school program called Community Schools. It's often referred to as Latchkey. But there was a barrier for our students, and that they're not being taught after school. They're caretakers that are there, and so it wasn't rich in academia. But the director of our community schools came to me and said, "Hey, we sort of have an issue here. We want to extend the school day in some ways." And so we created STEM curriculum for our after-school care summer camps and after-school care during the school year. And so we've infused STEAM curriculum, and Strawbees is a big hit to our after-school programs. And essentially, the after-school program is a for-profit entity. So they were able to invest in the think tank because they are able to turn a small profit every year and invest in their program. So that has funded Strawbees, as well as the purchasing of a Ford F-250 that goes around our district and reaches 35 schools, 30,000 students. And so I think it's money well spent. All right, so building relationships obviously is very important. I only have 3 bullets here because they're so important. Sort of going to go back to the mechanics of grant applications. Keep it reader friendly. Okay. Use your resources, whether it's a colleague, a peer, or ChatGPT. Yes, I said it, ChatGPT. Make sure it's reader friendly. You don't want to, I think the best advice is around a 7th or 8th grade level. Make it clear, concise, but reader friendly. And then similar, the last bullet point, make sure you're getting feedback from your peers. It's always important to have 2 eyes on the application because you don't want to have a missing comma or period and it just looks sloppy. And that kind of leads me into the next slide here. So this is sort of self-evident, if you will. But I just want to remind you guys how critical these pieces are, even though it may seem obvious. So when you're writing a grant, it's important to seek stakeholder input. So working with DODEA, we would work with our military family life counselors, our MFLAC counselors, as well as representatives from the social studies department, their director, their coordinator, and teachers on special assignment. I mean, it takes a village, y'all, and don't forget that, because if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, and that's true with grant writing as well. So, stakeholder input. Make sure that you dot your T's and cross your I's. I know I said that backwards, but that's how I like to do it. Overly ambitious goals. I've seen that. I've made this mistake before, where I've written a pie in the sky grant where if I look back and I didn't get it, I look back and I said I maybe probably could have made this more achievable. Maybe look at my SMART goals and see if mine are timely or easy to measure. So think about those types of things. And then the RFP, the request for proposal, details. So here's just a quick tip. I use when applicable and when available, and they usually are, I use the scoring rubric to literally plan my writing. That's my writing tool. That's my graphic organizer, if you will. So I treat the scoring rubric like a grading sheet. And I write directly to each criterion to maximize my points. And I try to, when I'm writing grants, I'm thinking about that reviewer in mind. I'm thinking about what are they going to understand as they're reviewing this application. They get applications from all over the place and all sorts of departments with all sorts of missions and visions. So if you can bring that vision to life with some, being articulate, but just answering the question, answer the question that they have for you, and that'll get you further. All right, just going to take a minute to calibrate here. Okay, so a few examples. I mentioned a little bit about the examples that with the think tank, so I'll glean over that one. But here are some ways that we're using grant money to fund tools like Strawbees. And so Strawbees is a big part of STEM instruction in Santa Rosa. Many of our teachers have been able to secure Strawbees, specifically the STEM classroom kits. Through our Education Foundation grants. So last year, our Education Foundation had opportunities for 66 teachers to receive $1,000 grants. And because of the cost effectiveness of the Strawbee kit, its longevity, its the ability to reuse them year after year and lesson after lesson, I proposed to my STEAM teachers that, hey, check out these Strawbees. They're the right price point. This would be great for our SREF STEAM grant. And sure enough, we had many of our teachers secure funding through the local Education Foundation. And if you don't know your Education Foundation off the top of your head, almost every school district in the state of Florida, in fact, nationally, has an Education Foundation. So if you just, go to a search engine and type in your district or county plus Ed Foundation, they'll probably have a website, and I implore you to seek them out, because it's a really easy way to use local monies to further local missions. So that is cool. The Santa Rosa, I love the Santa Rosa Ed Foundation. They do wonderful work with us, and they also help keep us connected with industry partners such as Florida Power and Light. Okay, the think tank. That is our mobile STEM lab. It's essentially a Ford F-250 that cruises around the district, from the cotton fields and peanut fields in Jay, Florida, to the pristine beaches of Gulf Breeze and Navarre. We cover a lot of ground here in Santa Rosa. But long story short, it took a lot of funding sources to make that project happen. And so one of them being a local organization. Well, actually, it's a national organization, but a local chapter attended a STEAM council meeting, and they had told us about an upcoming grant. And so we wrote that with the Society of American Military Engineers. And I keep bringing them up because once again, there is a chapter likely near you that you can lean on them and their organization, and they love helping schools. They love helping kids. So shout out to them. So they were able to help with actually buying Ozobots, Strawbees, and other STEM tools for our think tank. So shout out to SAME. Title I helps fund basically uh, high high risk schools. They have some funding. They have additional funding for lots of things, but one of them is equipment and supplies. So sometimes we do have special Title I events where we can purchase Strawbees to utilize at those events. And of course, I love Strawbees because they have that residual use, and we get our money's worth. Title IV, that's like after school activities and enrichment programs. So obviously, we have a lot of STEAM parent and family engagement nights in Santa Rosa. So we're able to tap into Title IV to help secure funding for STEM supplies like Strawbees. The third is our Santa Rosa Center for Innovation. I mentioned that was through our Triumph grant, about $10 million to build a facility, employ people, and stuff it with the most innovative technology available to students right now. And that would include Strawbees. Triumph, Title V is the Perkins grant that's connected to career and technical education and furthering programs in workforce. And that Title V also allows me to secure funding for Strawbees. All right. All right, so how does Strawbees align with state standards and hands-on learning goals in Florida? So I'll take a minute, let you read those 3 bullets about project-based learning, maker education, rapid prototyping, and then I just want to simply summarize the screen before we get to, I think, Q&A.
It'd be great to know as well, Michael, like how much, I think every school will be different, but it'd be great to know how much curriculum alignment helps in terms of like, how does that interact with grants? Like, is it something that you often bring up with in grants, or is it something that is an extra add-on that makes it your case more compelling?
When it comes to grants, typically standard alignment is a critical criteria, but I think it's just good practice. So best practice when I'm writing grants, always standards aligned, always standards aligned. And what I love about Strawbees is it's so easy to connect standards, especially science, mathematics, and language arts. It's just a matter of what grade level am I pulling from, because you will find a standard, whether it's simple machines, whether it's computer science, whether it's shapes, geometry, all that is obviously standards based, and we always include our standards, and even in our sort of non-traditional instruction. So special activities, STEAM days and STEAM nights, when they're doing that activity, we always reinforce the standards behind that. So yes, always include standards. But like I said, Strawbees aligns with Florida's standards by integrating science and mathematics, language arts, the hands-on project-based learning. And this approach not only meets like the curriculum requirements, but it fosters critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication, which is, I think, the backbone of what we're really trying to teach our kids. If someone asks me what they want a student to be, I want them to be the 4 C's, right? Those are durable skills, they're workforce ready, and they're good neighbors. I think most importantly, if we can get students to be creative, think critically, communicate, and collaborate, you want them in you want them in your society, and you want them to be a neighbor of yours, and I think that's important. With that, I'm happy to take questions. I hope I didn't go too quick or too slow. I hope I was engaging. But I think that's what I have for, unless we have questions.
So if anyone has any questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A. If not, there are a few things that I have ready to ask Michael. I think one thing that I wonder about when it comes to like making your applications, are there people like if you're a teacher, say in Florida, and you're looking at potentially applying for grants, are there people that you think are really good to have on your side, or like how do you start that process, because it must be super overwhelming to look at all the grant possibilities but not really know where to begin.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that question because I really meant to talk about this. So in Santa Rosa, the networking and the relationship building is paramount, whether it's, business and industry on the outside or your director of federal programming on the inside. So to answer your question, that is my go-to person in Santa Rosa. Her name is Dana Fleming. She does a wonderful job. She has a coordinator of federal programs that works alongside her and a wonderful bookkeeper. And they're really, really knowledgeable of the what we can fund, what we can't fund, deadlines. In fact, sometimes they just ask me, can you just add your little piece to this? And so, frankly, the federal programs director and coordinator are huge assets to me. And I think if you're not connected with them in your district, know who those people are and introduce yourself. Because oftentimes they have grants come across and they're looking for ideas, they're looking for inspiration, and they want it from the source. They want it from a teacher. They want it from that school level administrator or teacher on special assignment. The other resource that I really rely on is the people within my department. So the workforce education coordinator and my director, they sort of have, because I'm the STEAM guy, I don't have the FDOE knocking on my door saying, "Hey, this grant's coming up." But what I do have is wonderful colleagues in math and science, in language arts, and in workforce and federal programs to come to me and say, "Hey, Michael, we have a component of this grant that involves STEAM or STEM, and we'd like you for your expertise or to assist us with this piece." And that is often how I sort of attach myself or extend myself. Um, to different grants. And, in that regard, over the last 3 years, I think we've pulled in close to like $13 million that I've had some hand in. So I'm proud of that, but really it's due to the people I'm surrounded with, which is a very strong team here in Santa Rosa. So I would encourage you, if you don't have those connections quite yet internally, to absolutely reach out to them because it will serve you in your position.
Awesome. That's really good to know. I think another interesting thing that I wonder about is, if you're doing a budget section and you're thinking about your budget, how detailed do you think like that needs to be when it comes to grants? Does it depend on the grant or?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I always love to do the maximum amount of detail possible. Oftentimes in a grant, if you receive the grant, you can make revisions to it. That's all part of the process. But yeah, I mean, detail is extremely important. Whether it's responding to the RFP, putting your response in the right section, sending it to the right person. But as if I have, and typically I do have a very detailed plan. I know what schools I want to address. I know what data I want to address. I know what teachers may be involved. So the more detail, absolutely, the better off your chances of success.
That's good to know. And do you think, is there any kind of tone or structure that you think works really well? Does it depend on the grant? Like, should you be a little bit like super formal, informal? Like, is there a specific tone that you think works?
Yeah, I think I mean, that's a good question. I try to lean on just being concise and reader friendly. But obviously there is a professional tone when you're asking for finances from an entity, right? There's a formality in that and a tone of respect, if you will. But certainly I think most importantly is just describing your vision of the grant in detail with good data, align with standards. Um, that's going to get you really far. But, obviously, just to reiterate, you want to make it as professional as possible too.
Of course. We have a question in the Q&A for the family nights funded by Title 5, I think, or no, I think it's Title 4. What kind of language did you use to position Strawbees as aligned with well-rounded education or family engagement? How do you suggest programs show impact in a way that doesn't require a lot of data collection?
Sure. All right. So the first part of the question is family engagement. Strawbees is part of our curriculum during parent and family engagement nights. So literally the whole purpose of the parents and students being there are to be engaged. We use Strawbees as that tool for engagement. So you see students building side by side with a parent or a family member. You see the parent or family member offering guidance and support and using academic language. So I love these so much because the student sees that school is important to them and also to their family. And there's really precious moments at these family engagements, STEAM nights. I mean, it's obvious the language I use. I'm not exactly sure. If you want to email me, I can give you a copy of my grant. If you're welcome to look at it, so feel free to email me, and we can get down to the exact language. But I think it's very much overall encompassing of the idea behind Title IV. And the second question is, how do you suggest programs show impact in a way that doesn't require tons of data? Okay, so for me, I have one Microsoft form. It's a QR code survey for parent and family engagement nights, and it's about a 5-question survey for parents. And it's questions like, do you feel this activity helped your child understand concepts in STEAM better? Do you feel like the activity has increased career awareness in some capacity for your student or in your family? And so very, very general, about 5 questions. And it's only one survey, so with the same QR, but we'll go to 18 different schools, right? Use the same QR. So as they leave, it's an exit ticket for parents. They scan the QR code. It's uploaded to my Microsoft Forms. So I have an entire year of data in one form for parent and family engagement.
Nice. And it doesn't, is it sort of difficult to get, like, do you just try to make it as easy as possible for them to complete it so you don't, or do you offer
Right.
any incentives? Just make it as easy
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah, a lot of times, it sort of varies by school, but for me, it's posted at the entries and exits. Um, we usually have a table with perhaps like some takeaway fun stuff, for folks that attended. And at that table, we'll remind them to please take the survey. So we really have really good feedback, and it works really well. Let's see, we print out the QR, we post them on the walls, we remind them when they leave. I think
Nice.
that's it.
Um, Another thing that I think it probably depends on the grant, but do you think that a lot of proposals should include like long-term plans, or is it kind of very
Yes.
focused on project to project?
Well, it sort of depends on the grant, but some grants are over 2 or 3 years. The Triumph grant, I think, is a 5-year grant. So that definitely depends on what the grant is asking you. Um, if possible, I would always lean on longevity, right? Residual outcomes, return on your investment. I think if I was to give money away, those are the things I would like to see in the receiver of those funds, is that they're a good steward of that and they're stretching it, and it's going to last a long time.
Awesome. Yeah, if there's any more questions, I think another one that I have, it'd be interesting to know if Do you think it's important to emphasize like underserved populations in the proposal and like how much like getting the grant would address those populations?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say that, many of our grants are written with our highest need students in mind, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create equity. So that just is sort of the nature of grants, I think, is leveling the playing field, and that often um, includes, students with disabilities or minority groups or English language learners. So I would say that in the grants I've been successful in, almost every one of them has had some component of addressing high risk students. And so, yeah, so that definitely, I think that does help your cause.
Awesome. That's good to know. And in terms of like supporting material, because you talked a lot about data and how important data is, like wherever you can get it, however you can get it, super important. Are there other kinds of things that you include in terms of like letters of support from administrators or the community or any other, like what other kinds of supporting materials do you think help strengthen a grant application?
Yeah, absolutely. So for our big Triumph grant, we had letters of support from, Congress people, the mayor, big players in industry around here. So absolutely, anytime you can get letters of support, that definitely increases your chances of success. But again, what's on the RFP? What does the funder really want to know? And if it's they don't want to know that, then maybe it won't help your cause. But in my experience, I will just say that that is something we always try to include, especially when it's part of the criterion. But um, anytime you can get someone, that's an expert, in the field to lend support to your vision, how could that hurt,
Definitely, definitely. Um, Another interesting thing, I mean, this might be difficult for you to answer, but I think, especially, you know, it might be very much depend on the school and the area. But I think, are there any ways that you think about making your grant application stand out in particular? Because I'm sure that, a lot of these grants get multiple applications. Are there things that you kind of pay attention to over your like years of experience that you go, this is a specific thing for this that I think would stand out?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I will say that in Santa Rosa, I think the fact that we're extremely innovative, we're extremely cutting edge. We do have opportunities that some districts may not, and I think that does stand out. For example, the STEAM think tank, that does help our cause because we have the means to reach many students. In fact, all our students we can reach, pre-K through um, 12th grade. And that looks, when you have an effect size on a grant that is potential for 30,000 students, or if you're isolating a grade level and it might be 6,000 students, but in 2 years you can really touch every one of those students and impact them and implement, a STEM tool like Strawbees, and you have the means, or if you have an innovation center that can get it done, that definitely helps our cause. So there's a few, there are things unique to Santa Rosa. Another thing that helps our cause, I believe, is our military connectedness. We're surrounded by 3 or 4 major military bases, which is, I think, the pride and joy of our community. It's the backbone of our community, but it also helps us with DODEA grants, as we call them, Department of Defense grants. So, um, yeah.
And then I'm just thinking like, if you've never written a grant application before and this is like you're just joining this and you're like, okay, there's so many different things I've got to do now. I've never done any of this before, but I want some help funding this. I want to get these tools into my classroom or into my school. What do you think is a good, like, what are the first 3 steps that you think someone could take in just getting started, never done any of this before?
Okay, so for me, the first thing I did, my first grant, is I found a mentor, and that was our math and science coordinator, Mr. Jeff Bogus. Um, he had written, I think, it was like $500,000, and he's like, "Hey, bud, you're up. There's a STEAM section in here for you." And I was like, happy. I'm a decent writer. I taught language arts. I've written grants, but not big ones. Long story short, he asked me how much I knew, and I had to tell him pretty much nothing. So, but after, so he helped me. So he helped me. He described the process from a bird's eye view down to a granular level, and I really appreciated that because it provided a lot of clarity as far as um, what I needed to do to be successful in that grant. Whether it was a deadline or reading the RFP or um, including pertinent data. He was really a wonderful resource for me. And that continues to this day. Like I mentioned, our federal programs director, she's extremely knowledgeable and helpful. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is look for the expert, look for the person with experience to begin. Um, Before you know it, I mean, you will become confident in grant writing, especially when you get your first successful application back and then you see it in practice, you see it being implemented. And then the best part is when you see test scores go up and then you see students smiling and, engaged in the classroom. That's really cool. But yeah, find a mentor, use your resources. For me, I'm not shy about using ChatGPT for ideas or suggestions for how to to write something or organize my ideas or timelines and logic. So it's 2025, people. Like get with the times. Um, what else? Mentor, resources, just people. Like I said in the webinar, have someone proofread your stuff. Read old grants that were successful. That's another thing I did. I looked through like NSF, National Science Foundation, for example, or ed.gov. They'll actually post all the grants that were successful in the previous year. And so I like to go back and I look and see, okay, what were they working on and how did they format their grant and what was their timeline and things like that. And so sort of try to mimic what's already been successful in the past, if applicable.
That's a really good shout. Like looking at previous grants, definitely good, especially if you've got no experience doing any kind of grant writing. That's probably a really good way to go about it. Yeah, I think we're just coming up on the time that we said we'd spend on this. So what if it would be great to know, I can't remember. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? I think you've got some top takeaways actually in the next slide if you'd like.
Let's take a look at the top takeaways. Let's take a look at the top takeaways. Here we go. So yeah, I think I probably it might be a little redundant to read from this, but as y'all think about your next grant opportunity, you just kind of reminded of these major components of being successful. So, know your calendar, know your grant calendar. If you can, use your resources like ed.gov, for example, to track grant cycles. Write with the reviewer in mind. We mentioned that several times. Put yourself in their position and what would you need to know. Build a strong needs assessment. Your data is going to be your golden ticket. And then just be ready year round. So like right now I have at least 5 or 6 ideas on paper that I could easily whip together to create a grant application based on the criteria of the grant. I have a vision for what I want to accomplish, and so I'm either seeking or eagerly waiting for a grant opportunity that matches that vision. Other than that, I just want to say really appreciate you guys tuning in today. And I'm in the Panhandle. If you ever want to come visit Santa Rosa County and see all the great things we're up to, we love visitors. And my email, you can email me. It's knowltonm@santarosa.k12.fl.us. Yeah, reach out to me if I can be a resource to you. And I look forward to continuing the work with Strawbees and continuing to network with folks around the state of Florida. So please take me up on that and reach out to me if I can be of help.
And I will also put in, we have a whole page on the Florida's Next Generation Sunshine State Standards on Strawbees website about like how Strawbees meets those standards in case that is also helpful for you. But yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for sharing your email. Super appreciate that as well. I think, yeah, that it's been a great webinar. Thank you for the questions, and we hopefully will continue to have this series going forward.
Thank you, Lola.
All right. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.